Let's see. Is the Manosphere... Yeah, all right. Is the Manosphere really that dangerous? Louis Theroux, who I believe recently did a documentary on Fresh and Fit. And now he's talking with Chris Williamson. So, hey, what the Harry? Let's get into it.
Louis, you've got 3 sons, 20, 18, and 11.
Actually, hold on. Let me just double check here and make sure everything's hunky-dory. Mike's showing up.
Why were you interested in doing this documentary?
Well, for reasons closely related to that. I mean, yeah, that's obviously part of it. As a dad, I saw my...
Is he British? Louis Theroux. Some sort of Norman Anglo-Saxon BS. You know, I think actually the Normans were a part of England or the Normandy was a part of England for a while. William the Conqueror, 1066. Or thereabouts.
Kids were consuming... I mean, consuming maybe sounds more active than it was. They were being exposed to influencer content, Manosphere type content, specifically Andrew Tate back in...
Well, this kind of idea is a little bit interesting in that I think sometimes the worst thing you can do to kind of kneecap a person's influence is point out that they're not cool. It's almost more practically useful from a cultural standpoint than pointing out that they did something illegal, if that makes sense. I said, this is something I stole from an Isaac Asimov story, but the notion would be that sometimes tradition is a higher law than actual law, right? The notion that sometimes you do your best work in mitigating the effects of a person just by tarnishing them in a non-legal sense.
The sort of post-COVID era.
Sorry, I'm just seeing this. You guys are seeing this in the corner, right? That's not just something on my screen, right? I'm thinking that's something in his background.
When he first blew up, and I remember kids saying, the boys saying, "Oh, Andrew Tate said this or that," and think like, well, who is Andrew Tate? Like,
Andrew Tate is a tool who thinks being or liking women is gay, which is kind of ironic.
That's wasn't someone I'd ever heard of, and then the content of obviously turned out to be things like, oh, women can't drive or shouldn't be allowed to drive, or
based
women shouldn't be allowed to vote.
Based, no,
and it was hard.
So for the record, I don't know about that's tongue in cheek there.
That they were.
Although there is literally there is a thing where I think women's hippocampus, the thing responsible for direction, spatial awareness, is generally speaking less developed. Not saying women shouldn't be able to drive. I don't know if I want to be super near them when they do. That's actually yeah. Not all, I guess.
I was saying, like, well, he just says it as a joke. Like, everyone's freaking out about this, but we know what it is. Like, it's clearly clickbait or rage bait, but nevertheless,
that is true. I do tend to think like Andrew Tate and those of his ilk tend to very much lean into the shock value of what they're saying. That makes sense.
Its level of virality was kind of, it would be too far to say at this stage it was concerning, but it was kind of weird. It was just weird to see someone blow up like that quickly and to sort of commandeer swathes of the internet.
Well, I guess, when did Andrew Tate actually get super popular? Because I know at one point he had been a UFC boxer. Obviously, he kind of had stuff going on before with regards to his pimp and hose crap or whatever. But I think it was whenever kind of the resurgent of the, I guess I don't know when the red pill thing really started that much, but
so purposefully, like he kind of hacked.
For the record, him and Sneeko, I think, are going at it, or were going at it these days. They'd started out kind of thick as thieves a little bit, or at least Sneeko was very appreciative, very much admiring of what Andrew Tate was trying to do.
he figured something out about the algorithm, about Twitter and social media in general, TikTok really specifically, doing podcasts, saying outrageous things, having an army of clippers repurpose those into.
It does feel like that. I almost wonder if that's kind of typical of the whole category of the red pill movement, because I feel like a lot of those guys have kind of fallen off a little bit these days, because their whole shtick was go online and say like really outrageous thing, and it feels like sensationalism at its core is not a good long-term strategy, because it necessitates like a continued making things more outrageous, like because people like they won't continue to get offended at the same things again and again and again. It's a question of expectation versus subverting that expectation, and Hollywood's kind of in the same conundrum now, because their whole thing was subverting traditionalism, but now people just expect them to try and subvert traditional values. So it's like, okay, so what do you do now? You know, you just keep trying to do the same thing again and again and again, because people won't be surprised anymore. They might still be pissed off a little bit, but you're not really subverting anything. You're not subverting our expectations of you, put it that way.
Short snippets, and those being picked up by the algorithm, so that everyone, literally millions, were being
completely unrelated. I'd heard a word again the other day. Hooskow. Let's get the popo together and we'll take them all down to the Hooskow. That's a good one. It sounds like a place for crazy people, but I have to look that one up sometime.
Worldwide were being exposed to this content.
For the record, I think it literally just means prison or something, but...
So fast forward a few years, and he continued to become famous. Other people in his stead or in associated contexts were putting out similarly viral clickbait content, and the whole culture felt like it was being inundated. I say the whole like swathes of male skewing internet spaces were being inundated with it. And then meanwhile, I'm as a program maker of 30 years standing,
I think Zuby was kind of in this whole red pill thing for a while. Well, I don't know about him. I thought he was kind of in that category of persons, and he has like millions of followers, and he's just kind of fallen off a lot. Again, sensationalism isn't a good long-term strategy. It almost necessitates escalation.
I'm always looking for ideas, and I was talking to Netflix about making a program, and it seemed front and center of what I should be covering. As both someone, I've been joking that it's like the final boss battle of the Louis Theroux subject. Like I someone who specialized.
So I assume he's made like other documentaries as well.
It's over the years I've done stuff about racists, cults, sex workers of different stripes, people involved in pro wrestling and gangster rap.
Gangster rap. Here's a question. I was listening to the Beastie Boys' No Sleep Till Brooklyn. Does that not almost come off as rap? So I was just wondering, like heavy metal or like stuff like that, like which would have preceded each other? Like when did rap start out? When did heavy metal? Because I feel like heavy metal and some stuff like that is almost in the same category of like there's not a lot of tonal shift in the music itself. For the record, I don't think rap is music. It's rhyme, it's rhythm. Hot take, I don't think it's actually music. Music generally involves like a up and down, like altering tones and whatnot, not just rhythm or percussion. In any case, I was just wondering like which of them came first, because it does feel like heavy metal or stuff like that, or punk rock or whatever, kind of has a little bit of commonality there with rap. So if one inspired the other, or if they both kind of originate at the same time, or at least independently of one another. Interesting.
Aspect of the Manosphere, like this subsection of the Manosphere, feels like all those things mixed together. You know what I mean? They look a bit like wrestlers. They speak a little bit like rappers, and the content is clearly highly dubious.
That's true. They do kind of speak like rappers a little bit. At least Andrew Tate, I think, maybe. Yes, I don't know.
at best. You know,
He's being racist for the record. Yeah, he's saying they talk like. For the record, I do think sometimes people like, even if I don't know if they're even trying to, but they like subconsciously are. They remind me of somebody who's trying to act a little bit ethnic. If that makes sense, like that they're just kind of that they have like a lilt to the way they speak or the way they walk or talk or whatever, and it's just like okay, it's cool when black people do it. It's just kind of cringe when you do it.
whether or not it's sincere is a different question. So I was like, well, this is made to measure for whatever my skill set.
I guess for the record, there are maybe people who can pull it off. I don't know. I think it has to, like, whatever you're doing as far as your persona is concerned and how cool it is or whatever, it feels like it has to be kind of naturally occurring. It has to feel authentic. It's the pretentious part, perhaps. That's the issue.
That is in terms of making documentaries.
Work today is broken. Every day, people juggle so many different tools just to get work done. A simple task turns into a time-consuming...
I think the wrestling analogy is apt because a lot of the stuff that we see online, even from, Trump sometimes, is this weird kayfabe. Well, I don't know...
Oh, Trump's taking on Iran, and the crowd goes, what? Sorry, I could not believe... Sorry, it is kind of an apt comparison, I think.
Is this a joke or is this real? And if what nobody wants is to be accused of having pointed the finger at someone for telling a joke, saying that it was real, and there's always the sort of the comedian get out of jail free card of, well, like this is I'm not being serious with that, but at some point,
Nice.
the seriousness
I see this guy
actually comes into
merch, modern wisdom. Third eye with a skull. Nice. Nice.
touch reality.
Big time. The wrestling metaphor is, as you say, is very apropos. We're in a culture now.
Apropos. That one. That one I think it literally just means it pertains to the thing that's being talked about. Appropriate. I think it's kind of in the same vein as appropriate, but I think it's a little bit different. Apropos with nothing. Learned that from the community. That's how I heard it in any case. I have to look it up again one of these days.
Where everyone has access to the media. Like we all have our own mini... it used to be... I'm older than you are, but I grew up in an era of 3 or 4 TV channels. Like when cable arrived, that was a big deal. Like, oh wow, you got like 40 channels. Like, what? Mind blowing. Now...
I think that is like the one thing that is kind of insane. It feels like time quite often is a little bit, what they say, a flat circle. Like it's kind of only as real as the direction it takes, or the change it creates, or the distance it makes, right? Like we're still on planet Earth. We're still in the Milky Way galaxy. We're still in our own universe, wherever that is. But because of that, it's just like, I think we haven't maybe come as far as we think we have with regards to human nature. We're not as far away as we think we are from the people who were digging around in the mud, beating the crap out of one another. So with regards to a lot of progress, it's maybe a bit of an illusion to some extent, or it's not something that's maybe as concrete as we would like it to be, how far we've come. But man, one of the craziest innovations ever is the internet, in my mind. Like that level of intercommunication between a species, that was not something that we kind of really, evolved, if you will. It's just kind of an innovation. Man, it's one of the craziest things that's probably ever happened in the history of our species. This level of communication or intercommunication between the species, it's once in a lifetime. Man, no.
Oh, there's a real sense in which we kind of have millions of channels. Like everyone can have a YouTube account and broadcast what they like. So,
which I'm not for sure is a great... Well, it's simultaneously a great thing and a terrible thing, I tend to think.
we can all curate a media persona, and we all have we all have access to the airwaves of our
Oh,
choosing.
and perhaps like the worst thing about that is kind of the algorithm, the fact that what you watch kind of feeds on itself, and it leans into that a degree of instability, or lends itself to a biased perspective, perhaps, because again, the more you watch of a certain thing, the more that your algorithm is going to feed you of that thing. For the record, I don't have my algorithm on. I don't have that type of watch history on, so I think the stuff I'm seeing is mostly stuff I search up. I do have subscriptions, some of them. Most of them are cooking stuff. Alex Steele is blacksmith. Jesse Who. Who's that big, like, Samoan or Hawaiian guy who does cooking? Ian something. I think he's Samoan or Hawaiian. He has the cool arm thing tattoo. Baking with Babish. That's one I didn't mention the last time. Baking with Babish does really cool cooking stuff.
And part of that...
And Ryan George. And Ryan George Plus. Give me a second. I have something to take care of.
is employing personas and, as you say, kayfabe. Alongside that, you know, as someone who, I mean, I'm a fan of, in a sense, self-impersonation. Like, I find all of that, it's not coincidental that I go into these worlds where people take off-the-peg identities, like, my name's Waldo, and I'm a wrestler, you know, and actually, no.
Kind of interesting.
Your name's Louis Theroux and you're a BBC documentary maker or a Netflix documentary maker. Do you know what I mean? Or the worlds of adult film stars. You know, a lot of these worlds I've gone into are places where you take a new name. And the online world, which I was looking at, same thing. One of the main guys I looked...
It's true, like, it tends to favor a very over-the-top type of persona, the extremes of the spectrums. So it would probably incentivize people to be as over-the-top as possible, and generally speaking. I like to think I'm mostly the same as when I'm in real life, but it's one of those things where I think I tend to go, like, I only have kind of two modes, generally speaking, at the risk of, you know, describing myself and therefore solidifying and concreting the way I have to behave. But it feels like it's one of those things where I'm either completely absorbed with the fact that people are watching me, and it's like a full-on histrionic personality disorder, or on the other end of the spectrum, it just doesn't care at all. I try to favor the latter, where it's like, you know, dance like no one's watching or whatever, but, you know.
That is Harrison Sullivan's his name, but he goes by HS Tiki Toki online.
Is that actually a real person?
There's also a guy called
I mean, it is a real person. HS Tiki Toki. What the hell?
Nicholas Balanthazi, and he
All right. Nicholas Balanthazi
uses the handle Sneeko. So it's another...
Oh, wow. Hey. Who knew? I'm going to call him that from now on. Nicholas Balanthazi.
Another realm in which you're performing yourself, and you can...
I feel like you should do one on Sneeko sometime, if that makes sense. But I guess I don't know if, like, after what happened to Fresh and Fit, there was a whole thing with Fresh and Fit's former girlfriend that is now coming out and rebuking them in no uncertain terms or whatever. But for the record, I think she was not uninvolved with what was happening on Fresh and Fit and some of the more non-PC stuff that was going on. I guess maybe that's a mild way of putting it. I think at one point Fresh and Fit, one of the guys put on a clan mask and did a whole stream that way, and she was apparently the one who made the mask. And it's one of those things like, okay, how proactive does a victim have to be before they're no longer a victim? How much initiative do they have to display before they're no longer seen as, like, oh, you're just this poor little girl who's being manipulated out? Don't know about that.
Employ irony,
It's good that she's kind of out of it, I suppose, but man.
You can employ hyperbole. You can employ a sort of performative self-parody.
I prefer the notion of irony rather than hyperbole. Because again, in that type of sensational thing, it's not like a stable, long-term strategy. It's kind of an avaricious type of thing where you have to keep feeding it more and more.
All of them obfuscating who you really are, but sneaking in the whole time. I mean, I sometimes say puckishly, like, there's no such thing as a joke. I mean, obviously there is
Puckishly. That's one I don't know.
such a thing as a joke, but there's a sense in which all jokes contain a masked truth. And so you can be racist as a joke up to a point, I guess, but there comes a time when actually you're just...
I think that's partially true. I think sometimes... I think perhaps quite often jokes are meant to mask a truth on some level. And maybe even inadvertently they communicate something like that. But I don't think it's always the case. I think sometimes people are just shit-talking or whatever.
It's being racist.
Yeah, what's that line about any organization that starts out pretending to be a cult or making a joke about being a cult eventually becomes a cult?
Very true.
It's kind of interesting.
And so there's this kind of double-edged challenge that I had in making a program of wanting to take it seriously as a subject and not wanting to take it more seriously than it deserved. Right? I think there's elements in all these kinds of stories.
Sounds like a good strategy, honestly.
Where you have to you can't fall into the trap of...
It's one of those things where, like, I think as a person who's doing the news or a person who's doing content or anything like that, you never want to be seen as like the old dude who's just like, get that ball out of my yard, you little bastard. No, it's kind of a, like, yeah, I feel like if you want people to take you seriously, you kind of have to not take what you're doing too seriously to some extent.
Seeing it as being a part of a moral panic. You know, there's a sense in which you have to keep things...
Get the shovels. No, get the torches and pitchforks.
In proportion. I do think that youngsters are very often able to read media in a way that is quite subtle, you know, and they can see the parts of it that are performative. Like, I'm an old school fan of rap. Like, I used to listen to some of the lyrics, if you took them literally, are horrific. They're literally about, you know, going around killing people. And
again, there's still that notion of, like, if you are just, like, over the top taking it seriously, things that aren't really meant to be seriously, it just kind of makes you look like a numpty.
Just committing violence and you know, I'm talking about old school NWA and Ice Cube, Eazy-E, and then that whole era, and you know, Tupac to an extent, even to this day. Like, I still like a lot of grime and drill music, but you sort of learn how to read it as...
For the record, I think that the British rap scene is not exactly the cream of the crop. If you could think of any people less suited to rap than Britain or British people, the only people I could think of would maybe be the Germans. But no, I think the Germans, they have kind of got swag. They've got swag. English are the most stilted culture, pretty much, in my mind. That's one of those things where I would not have thought of them as being any good at rap, just in general.
Not complete.
Although I guess maybe it's just like the upper echelons or the snooty, posh accents that I'm thinking of.
Literal. So it's in the Manosphere. There's a similar issue, which is how what parts of this you know, you don't want to. You got to. I try and employ enough of my own irony, enough of my own.
Which parts of it just specious humor, sacrilegious.
Sort of sense of recognizing the parts of it that are playful and irreverent and...
Oh, that's what I was thinking. Irreverent, that's the word I was...
almost kind of enjoyably outrageous, and then the parts of it that are just over the line, abusive, bullying, and factually wildly incorrect. Because the flip side of having a world in which everyone has a media channel is not.
And I feel like that is kind of one of the glitches about them, like where I think they do come off as a little bit like, hey, let's just have some fun and, you know, poke some fun at some people who are very easily offended, which, you know, all fun and good, all well and good. That's one of my favorite pastimes, you know, ticking off people who I feel like almost need to be ticked off a little bit. It's good for them, shakes up their beliefs and whatnot. But beyond that, I feel like a lot of the Manosphere people would go and they would get a whole bunch of women who were not of the highest caliber and bring them onto a show where they could, you know, score points by making fun of these women or whatever. So it's kind of a little bit like, yeah, they're having fun. Yes, they're just irreverent, but also they're kind of trying to make larger points about women as a whole, which is not exactly the best from my perspective.
Not just, we all have an ability to become celebrities and perform ourselves in public, but nothing is curated. And so suddenly we're in a world where it's widely believed by many young people that the earth is flat. It's become
It's funny.
relatively normal to...
And that's the point. Like, is it a good thing that everyone can speak their things? Because with the sheer inundation of content, it feels like everyone can find a place where they belong to some extent. So they can just run around, hey, I make friends over here, get involved in this group over here, and get really, really involved in that, and create my own echo chamber. Because, like, there's enough people involved that you can just fit in anywhere. It used to be back in the day, like, the way you made friends was not so much along, you know, ideological or political lines necessarily. It's more just proximity. I mean, you talked with the people you were around. And I think to some extent that was a much better model and provide a much better, like a much more balanced perspective. Because, you didn't really necessarily make friends or allies with people who agreed with you on everything. You made friends with the people you were around. It's one of the one of the best features, I think, of religion in general. The people you get to know are not people who you necessarily agree with on anything else or would have met, like, in any other circumstance. There's just this commonality of, you know, a seeking of the good of humanity or salvation or religion that brings you together and forces you to cooperate with people that, again, they're not exactly... your natural playmates, if that makes sense. There's a less weird way to say that. They're not people who you would naturally have an affinity for.
Say that the pyramids were built by space aliens.
Yeah, that's just... I don't know about that.
Doubt whether we've been to the moon. I mean, call me old-fashioned, but it's like I have limited patience for that kind of nonsense.
One of the things...
That's one of the most British things I've ever heard. Anyways, you can probably go check out the rest of this if you like. Is the Manosphere Really That Dangerous? By Louis Theroux. And, by Chris Williamson. Interviewing Louis Theroux.